Alright, so this morning I finished reading The Hobbit, so we're going to do a few videos here and just get it all done out of the way so we can move on. Um, so, this video we're going to talk about chapter 15 of The Hobbit, The Gathering of the Clouds. And so, what happens here is you have basically Thorin has become lost at this point. In the last chapter, it mentioned that the goblins were amassing. Elves were getting their army together. They were marching towards the mountain. They shifted to go help the men of the Long Lake. And so Thorin sends a raven messenger out. Well, first they hear from the thrush that Smaug is dead. Now there's an older bird that has to come and translate for this other bird, so because they can't understand the bird's speech, but Bard earlier could. But you do see them sending messages by bird, and reminded me of World War I when they would use carrier pigeons to do this. Tolkien obviously is a veteran of that war, and he witnessed all this stuff. He did like Morse code and all kinds of signaling and stuff like that, deciphering messages. They had to, so that the enemy wouldn't be able to know what they were doing. They had to, in messages, they kind of had to do like a coded language, and he was a signals officer, so he took part in a lot of that. But so yeah, it's kind of cool that you see him put that into his story here. And also, when I was reading this, I was thinking about what he had said about beast fables and on fairy stories, how that's not real fantasy. But of course, in a fantasy world, you're going to have talking animals. It is believable in that world. Obviously, in reality, that's not something that I think we can do. We've taught apes to use sign language, but they don't speak, But anyway, the elves and the men come to the Lonely Mountain, and they say, "Hey, Thorin, this is what's happened to us. We've been displaced. There's some treasure in here that belongs to us." Well, to me, Bard says, because Bard is speaking on behalf of them. And Thorin's like, "No." And he sends messages by bird, by a raven, to be exact, to his cousin Dan in the Iron Hills to come. And Thorin and company begin to fortify the mountain to get it ready. Bard attempts to parley with him again. I'm going to read a little passage here. Now, these were fair words and true, if proudly and grimly spoken, and Bilbo thought that Thorin would at once admit what justice was in them. He did not, of course, expect that anyone would remember that it was he who discovered all by himself the dragon's weak spot, and that was just as well, for no one ever did. But also, he did not reckon with the power that gold has upon which a dragon has long brooded, nor with dwarvish hearts. I mentioned yesterday, I believe it was in my last video, about the dragon sickness that's laid on the gold. The gold has been cursed. You see this in Norse mythology. The gold of Fafnir, the dragon. Long hour, of course, it mentions more dwarvish hearts, because dwarves are stubborn and a little greedy, and they get set on something. They don't change. Long hours in the past days Thorin had spent in the treasury, and the lust of it was heavy on him. Though he had hunted chiefly for the Arkenstone, yet he had an eye for many another wonderful thing that was lying there, about which were wound old memories of the labors and the sorrows of his race. And he rejects it again. So, there's going to be no choice but to go to war. But as you know, there is a bigger threat coming. Well, Bard says, "Hey, give me what was once my people's." Thorin's like, "No, and not until you send the Elf King away, because he was awful to us." And so they leave, and that's basically that chapter right there. So Thorin is fallen to dragon sickness. He's searching frantically for the Arkenstone, which Bilbo has, and they don't know. That could cause a problem. I think I mentioned that yesterday as well. But anyway, that is all for this one, and I'll be back soon with the next video. I'm only going to do 2 more videos, and so there's not really much to say in some of these chapters. So we're just gonna run right through it and get this done, like I said. So the next 2 chapters are 1 video, and the final 2 chapters are 1 video. More on that later. So, anyway, that's all for now. Hope you enjoyed this video, and like I said, I'll be back.